For those who are not familiar with JVP, in brief, we help employers across the UK to attract the very best people, and we do that through comprehensive online job advertising with employer brand marketing. Even if you're not recruiting right now, what I'm about to cover is as important now as ever. The candidate market has significantly changed due to the pandemic, but employers must not get complacent, as great people can still be very choosy about where they work. How you look after your employees right now and communicate about your employer brand, both internally and externally, will have a significant impact on the talent you're able to attract in the future. At the end of the day, your company has an employer brand, whether you have actively pursued one or not. In terms of employer brand, it's the identity of your company as an employer of choice, and it consists of your employee value proposition and your reputation as an employer. Employer branding, on the other hand, is the process of promoting your company as an employer of choice to attract, retain, and recruit. Employer branding is certainly what JVP is very passionate about, and specifically when it comes to attracting talent. And with the help of a strong employer brand, your company will be able to attract and increase the number of quality applicants on the market. In a recent survey conducted by Investors in People, employees cited 3 main reasons for looking for a new job. The first one, I'm sure, is not going to be so much of a surprise for everybody, being money, but closely followed by people feeling undervalued and those that want a better work-life balance. And interestingly, half of the respondents to the survey said that they would rather have a friendly workplace rather than a 3% pay rise. So just want to take a look at 5 things that individuals consider when looking for will consider when looking for a new job in the future. These factors are important to think about in your workplace, both to retain as well as to attract new people. Even if you already have what we're about to go through covered as part of your employee value proposition, consider as we talk through whether this is being communicated well in the right places and frequently. And Anthony will be talking more about the communication side of it a bit later. So first of all, we'll take a look at culture, because potential new recruits will be looking at whether your existing employees are happy. Do they enjoy working for the company and with one another? Do they feel like their work is valued? And are employees passionate about the company and the work that they do? How much investment goes into the latest technology? I mean, this certainly can cause frustrations particularly with the younger generation, but not limited to, as many are used to using the latest gadgets and the latest software. And particularly when it comes to IT professionals, it's one of the main driving factors with the company that they choose to work for. How experienced and how inspirational is the leadership team in your business? Certainly leaders that are demonstrating great skills and motivational will attract better quality people. Are there regular performance reviews? Interesting, 60% of Generation Z wants multiple check-ins from the manager during the week. And of those that responded to a survey, 40% want the interaction with their boss to be on a daily basis or several times each day. So thinking about what you do at the moment and how you can communicate the culture to potential employees. Is your environment a fun, relaxed environment, or is it very corporate? People want very different things, but think about what your environment is like. Are company social events organised? Are employees given autonomy? And how important is teamwork in your company? And this is an important one and quite a serious one for many people now when they're looking for an opportunity, something to take quite seriously in their consideration, is corporate social responsibility. And does your company support environmental, community or charitable causes? And it's been fantastic to see in the news so many wonderful stories of businesses supporting the community during this pandemic, of course. But of course, it's not limited just to the last 3 months. Whatever you do as an organisation to support external causes is really important nowadays to the job seekers looking for new employers to work for. And very importantly right now is, what is your company approach to diversity and equality? Such an important topic, and one that's of course been in the spotlight over recent weeks. When it comes to employer branding as well, are your job adverts inclusive? So lots of different things to think about there in terms of what you're doing in your workplaces already, and also how you can communicate that, because potential employees will be looking at these things when they're considering working for you. Okay, so we're going to talk about benefits. Are your salaries competitive? Are you transparent internally? And if you are, do you advertise your salaries on your job adverts? Including salaries will give you in a region around about 43% better quality response if you do include them on your job adverts. Flexible holiday scheme with sell and buyback options. Is this something that you could consider? Certainly, given the fact that, right now, I'm sure for some businesses, there are lots of employees with lots of annual leave to still take for the remainder of the year. So maybe this is something you could review and look to offer now and for the future. Wellness schemes. Of course, mental health and well-being has become a big priority for employers over the last few years, and it's going to be really, really important that this great work continues in providing support for employees, because potential recruits will be looking at how you look after your employees, what support is likely to be available to them. Mental health certainly has been impacted significantly during this pandemic, so it's going to be, I think, quite a growing consideration for many in how you look after people. Can you enhance pensions beyond the statutory levels? Certainly the government has brought this to the forefront over the past few years, and so an ever growing consideration for younger people too. Hours. Work-life balance, not all, but many, of course, will have had time to reflect on this recently, and I can see the importance of this factor growing too. Home working, is that something you can continue with? Maybe part home working, part office working, or even if that's not an option, possibly flexi time to help people avoid the rush hour. It will certainly help your business to stand out amongst the crowd if you're able to offer these things and reflect on you as an organisation and your employer brand. Can you consider part-time options? I mean, where this is viable, it will certainly open up the talent pool. And on this topic, will the 4-day working week ever materialise? It's been talked about. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, so please do pop them into the comments section. Okay, company history, stability and ambitions. Now, given the impact of the pandemic, job security is going to be a major consideration for employees in whether to stay put, and for those that are considering a new employer too, job security is going to be a massive factor. So how will your business bounce back from the pandemic, and what exciting plans does it have in place for the future? If you have a good story to tell, then make sure that you're sharing it. Personal development and growth opportunities. What do you have to offer in terms of internal training or external courses, qualifications? Perhaps if you've needed to furlough people during this period, have you encouraged and supporting training opportunities? And it's not too late. If you still have people on furlough, that could be something you could look at now. And even if people are back, this is something that people are more and more looking at, is how they can grow. The younger generation are looking at how they can grow and develop personally. And people of all generations, this is important to keep their minds stimulated. The reputation of the company as a great place to work is vital if you want to attract the best people. So what do your employees say they love about working for your business right now? If it's not something you've asked recently, I'd certainly encourage you to do this. And don't be afraid to also ask what they don't like about working for the business at the moment. This engagement will enable opportunity for improvement. I recently asked my team what they love working about, what they love about working at JVP, and this is what Rianne said. She loves working at JVP because of the gratitude that she's shown every day by her colleagues, and because of the flexibility that she's rewarded with in return for her efforts. The teamwork, and the office environments. Of course, when we're not in the middle of a pandemic, so we're all working from home at the moment. And she's able to enjoy these things every day, and importantly, the opportunities that she's been given to develop her skills. So it's a mixture of different things. That the feedback that I had from all of my team, it was the variety of different things about the culture and the opportunities that is what they love about working for the company. Now is as good a time as ever to review your employee value proposition and make a positive impact on your reputation as an employer for the future. Consider how you're communicating what is happening in your business right now, both internally and externally. It's really important to do this, because even if you're doing great things, if people on the outside or even inside don't see this, then it will definitely impact on how your employer brand is perceived. On that note, I'm going to hand you over to Anthony, who's going to share his expertise on how to make a positive impact through internal communication in a crisis, and also how to assess your digital footprint as an employer. I hope that's been of some help for you. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Cheers, Kath. So yeah, I'm going to be looking at the communication side of ensuring that you're viewed as a great place to work, and just a brief overview of who Outright is. We're a PR and communications agency, so we work with brands to enhance and manage their reputations, and we predominantly do that through creative storytelling, as well as carrying out campaigns for clients. We also work with them on training and consultancy on topics such as social media and how to write press releases and understanding what is news. A very brief look at what is PR, and I think this is important to look at, because a lot of people pigeonhole PR as media relations, and it's an important tactic, but at the core of what PR is, the CIPR says it's about your reputation. It's the result of what you do, what you say, and what others say about you. Now, if you think back to what Kath was talking about with reputation as an employer, people will have an opinion of you as an employer based on the things that you've done, the things that you've said, and the things that other people have said about you. And like I said, it's not just media relations now that the world of PR works. It's an integrated approach. It's looking at the paid elements around social media advertising, for example. We've still got the media relations on the earn side, whether it's your traditional media or trade magazines or niche blogs and influencers. It's understanding how we can get that content shared across other people's platforms. And of course, it's using your own channels of your website, your social media, your newsletters to communicate those messages. Now, as well as the positive PR campaigns that we carry out, we also specialize in issues and crisis communications. And that's where a lot of our focus has been over the last sort of 10 weeks, as you can imagine. And a key word that we've been using with our clients is reassurance. And the reason for that is, if we just take a quick look at an issue or a crisis, it's damaging reputations, it causes a loss of trust, and it's risking the health, lives or safety of key stakeholders. And that actually sums up the coronavirus and everything that the businesses have been going through over the last 10 weeks. It's been about reassuring employees, certainly from an internal point of view, that, for example, the workplace is safe to come into and operate in. Now, in terms of a crisis, traditionally, these are the common areas that we would be looking at for clients. It's, if you've got a branded vehicle and it causes a big crash on the M56, or your driver is filmed driving erratically, that can cause an issue. But also the response to an issue or a crisis can lead to further issues. And we saw that with the coronavirus, with people like Mike Ashley and Sports Direct, and how they responded to the coronavirus and trying to say they were a key operation that they needed to have their staff in. They were putting profit before people. And their response to that issue or crisis deepened the issues that Mike Ashley and Sports Direct were facing. So why is communication so important during and after a crisis? Well, 80% of people remember the communications during a crisis. So it doesn't matter how well operationally you clear up the crisis or overcome that issue. 80% of people are going to remember how you communicated during that, whether it was positive or negative. During the coronavirus, there was 54% of UK people in a survey said they wanted daily updates from their employer about the coronavirus, and 40% of small businesses close following a crisis. So if there is an issue or a crisis, it can have severe repercussions for businesses of all sizes, but communications can play a really important role in helping brands navigate through this period and then beyond. So obviously, external communications is obvious. You're dealing with the media around a crisis if there's been a fire. But actually, the argument can be made that internal communications is possibly the most important of the two. And there's two huge reasons for that. One of them is brand ambassador. Your employees can become your brand ambassador through really good communications. And if you're keeping them involved and you've got them on side and they love your brand, they trust your brand, if they see something negative on social media, for example, they will jump to your defense. They will help tell your story. And conversely, they could just randomly praise you as a great employer. We've seen it during the coronavirus with people taking to social media to actually say how wonderful their boss has been or how wonderful their employer has been throughout this time, removing any issues or worries that they've got and, doing their best around their well-being. And having that employee say it, who they're not paid to come to your defense, they're not paid to speak positively about you on social media or to their friends. And because they're not paid to do that, whenever they do it, it adds a huge amount of credibility to the message that they're getting across. And as a second really important benefit of good internal communications is it helps you to control the narrative. We've seen examples on social media of people going online and talking negatively about a brand or a business or a particular product or service. And, if they're posting that at 8, 9 o'clock at night, it could be that it's 9 a.m. by the time you're seeing that when you get in the next day. And in the meantime, your employees might have seen that and been coming to your defense. And if there was no communication from the brand at all during that period, that silence gets filled with misinformation and rumor, and it can escalate. And it makes it really difficult to bring it back, to get people back on side and to get the truth across or to correct that negative perception. However, if you've empowered your workforce and you've got them on side and they've become this brand ambassador, they will talk about you positively on social media. They will respond to negative comments, which helps to control the actual story. So how have we been working with brands on their internal communications? The first one is listen. We've made sure that we've been listening to their employees in terms of what is causing issues or anxieties, what are their concerns or worries. And I think you'd be surprised at what their concerns and issues are. An obvious one is it safe to come into the workplace? But beyond that, there's tons more other issues that we've come across. For example, they're fine coming in, they trust that it's going to be a safe environment for them to work in, but they have to get public transport, and that's what's worrying them. Or it could be that they trust you as an employer and your facility is fine, but they actually don't trust some of their colleagues to adhere to the social distancing guidelines, so therefore they're then worried about that. And we've been conducting the listening side through email surveys, through telephone conversations, and through ad hoc feedback that line managers have been having as well. And the second pillar that we've been, so these are 3 pillars, and the second pillar that we've been following is communicating that action. Kath was talking about, if you're not talking about what you're doing, how are people supposed to know? And it's absolutely true. If you have adapted your workplace to make it safer for employees, we've got to communicate that. And with that communication, it's got to be open, honest, and transparent. It's saying, yes, this is a difficult time for everybody, but we've listened to you. We've put in these changes. We've not been able to put in changes for this department, so therefore we're not going to run that service as we were before. And it's like I say, it's about being open and honest with the employees, and they're really going to appreciate that transparency. The frequency of communication is really important. I've already said that silence gets filled with rumor and misinformation, and it doesn't matter whether it's external or internal, that rumor and that misinformation will grow and grow. And before you know it, you've got this monster that you've got to deal with, and it's very difficult to then bring that back. Some 54% said they wanted daily communications, which shows you how important this issue is to employees. And it's not just the coronavirus, it's any crisis or issue that you're facing. Employees want to know what's going on. They don't necessarily want to know about numbers and profits and the impact on the finances. You know, if we do that listening exercise again, there's a lot more information that they're wanting to understand. And the format's really important too. Some people prefer video, some people prefer the written word, and some people prefer it in a visual format. So it's about taking that one message and repurposing that across the different channels. And the third pillar is listen again. You know, we were given 2 ears and 1 mouth, and we should use them accordingly. You know, we should listen twice as much as we do talking. As employees return to the workplace, whether they've been working from home or they've been on furlough, there could be new challenges or new concerns or new issues that come up. And it's about making sure that we continue to listen to the employees and feeding that back into the communication. During a crisis, you start to see a business's true colours. And there are tons of examples of that just from the coronavirus. But if you look wider at any issues or crises that have happened, you'll see that, like I said, their true colours have shone through, and people will question whether they want to work for them as an employee or whether they want to apply for a job with them. And if we think about the journey that people go on once they've seen a job advertised, it's quite shocking, surprising, and scary of what information is out there that's impacting what people think about your brand. So, you know, they'll see a vacancy, they'll jump onto Google the brand, but what exactly are they seeing? You know, as well as your website probably being the first result within Google, if you scan your eyes down page 1 of Google search results, Google will bring back lots of different other websites that you don't have control over. So whether it's good news or bad news, Google's going to show that within the search results. Now, if it's positive, like these 3 examples here, then that's great. You know, if you're applying for a job at NicePack and you can see they're launching industry firsts, or you're applying for a role with Group Cynefin and it's talking about it's strengthened its housing team, or you're applying for a job at Wind Construction and it's won an award for being named the best SME in the construction industry, that's, you know, that's not coming from their own website. That's trusted third-party news outlets that are speaking about that. It adds huge credibility to how you think. You know, the media isn't dead. It still shapes, informs, and influences opinion. It's just majority online now rather than print. So, you know, if the Daily Post are running a story on vacancies in the area, again, it's one of those things that adds credibility to your brand. You know, if a media outlet is talking about your business and the vacancies you've got, you must be trustworthy. And think about your own website as well. You are the media. You have your own audience. You know, it's a slightly different audience to the Daily Post and to the Daily Telegraph or the BBC, but you have your own audience. And in this example, that audience is your current employees and potential employees. So what stories can you put on your site that shows you as a great employer, that you're working on great projects for fantastic clients, that you're investing in training rooms, that you're investing in professional development, as Kath was talking about, for your members of staff, and you're championing them and you're putting them at the forefront of the stories that you're trying to tell. So from an internal communications point of view, whether it's just for your own website or for third-party publications that's going to go online, it's having a conversation with your PR and communications person in-house or your PR agency to say, this is what we're trying to achieve as a business. We want to recruit. We want to position ourselves as an employer of choice. Can we get some of these stories that we've got out there into the public domain? And also, it's on that internal communication side, it's championing and it's empowering your current employees to identify possible stories that they can then take to the PR agency or the in-house PR team to say, we've just done this, or I've had this idea for a piece of expert commentary, and then progressing with that. You know, if you've got 200 employees, that's 200 possible leads for generating stories, which is absolutely huge. Of course, it's not all positive on Google. Obviously, we've blanked out the brand here that we were working with, but if you typed in their brand and the letters CO for contact or contact form or contact us, you can see that Google was suggesting that the word complaints come up. And Google takes that from what people are actually searching. So as you type your brand into Google's search engine, what is Google suggesting about your brand? And of course, you've got Google reviews as well, where you can see this brand had 2.2 stars. So from a potential employee point of view, do you want to go and work for that brand if they've not got a very good reputation? And it's not just Google, it's other review sites as well. Glassdoor is the one that I'm sure everyone's aware of on this call around, your current and former employees can go onto Glassdoor and leave reviews about what it's like to work there. I've put JVP up as an example. Kathy, pleased to know that there's 2 reviews on there and both of them are 100%. But it's these third-party websites like TripAdvisor or Checkertrade that Google also brings back in its results. So if you search for JVP Group, yes, you'll see the JVP Group website and you might see its LinkedIn and Twitter, but you'll also see Glassdoor and you'll also see a Daily Post article about Ken Skate's visiting during the opening of its new offices. I appreciate I'm on the screen twice now. I apologize for that. It's also about who are your people, as well as people Googling your brand. If you've got a prominent employee or someone on the senior leadership team, their names can go into Google. And again, what is Google saying about that person? And what's Google showing in terms of images? And it's about making sure that from an internal communications point of view, that your employees are aware that what they're doing online is creating their own individual digital footprint. What they're posting on their social media or any stories that go into the media about them is there for everybody to see. And again, it's understanding how can you push, if you identify who your key people are that people are Googling about your brand, how can we push more stories out about them and doing staff profiles or expert commentary, thought leadership, so that when people actually do Google for them, there's some really good, positive, strong stories that strengthen not just their reputation, but your reputation as an employer as well. And it's the same on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the #1 go-to for, excuse me, while I just turn the light back on. LinkedIn is the go-to platform for professionals. And are you wow or are you meh? If you're meh, there's not much filled in on the brand's profile. And your LinkedIn profile can show off a lot about that brand. It's a bit like your website. You can put accomplishments and publications and awards and projects on there. And again, it's giving from an internal communications point of view, it's giving your team the knowledge that this is impacting on business operations. And it's also giving them any guides, support, or investing in social media training to show them how to develop their LinkedIn profile. So again, they come across as wow, which means the company comes across as wow as well. And it's your other social media platforms as well. What news are you sharing out about career opportunities or personal development? The people in charge of your social media channels in-house, are they aware that as a business, one of your key goals at the minute is recruitment? If they're being driven by the sales team and they're being told to push product A and to talk about a particular service, that's not necessarily going to help the overall business strategy around recruitment. So it's having that conversation with them to say, we want to recruit, can we do more content around career opportunities, around career development? We've had this story published around personal development and professional development. Can we make sure we're sharing that on our social media channels as well? And that third pillar around listen again, it's not just listen to employees, but it's listening to what your potential candidates are telling you digitally. When they land on your website, their behavior gives you so much information. For example, for this campaign that we ran, there was a 66% increase in sessions on the website. and there was a 29% increase in traffic to the careers page, we were able to look at all the different pages that people were landing on and feed that back to the content team to say, this type of story is working really well. We were able to look at where the social media, where the website traffic was coming from and say, right, 50% of the traffic is coming from Facebook, Twitter, Instagram after these types of posts. And from an internal communications point of view, it's having that conversation, say, do more like this because this is working really well. So it's listening to what people are doing online, your potential candidates are doing online, to take that forward. So that's a sort of whistle-stop tour of internal communications and reputation and your digital footprint. Like I said, it's scary to think what information is out there, not just about you as a brand, but you as a person, and therefore then you as your employees. And it's about making sure that you understand what the journey is that potential candidates are going on to make a decision about whether they apply for a role with you or not. And also a huge benefit of bringing employees in and doing staff profiles and talking about, you know, their career development is you earn that sense of loyalty with your current group of employees. It really helps retention, and it really helps bringing them on board as a brand ambassador, which during a crisis and after a crisis is possibly your biggest weapon to making sure that that trust remains there with all key stakeholders. So that's it from me. I'm sure questions have come in on the chat box. So I'll bring Kath back in, and we can hopefully start working our way through them.
Appreciate that recruitment necessarily isn't the biggest thing on everyone's mind right now, but as we've both been talking about, myself and Anthony, it's when you need to recruit, it's probably too late by that point to start looking at your employer brand. It should be an ongoing process. So looking at it right now, if you have a little bit more time in your hands or there's just a lot going on in the business, it's really important to be looking at that now and not just waiting until you're recruiting. Okay. So I'm just, as I say, I have a couple of issues there. So question, we have a question here for Anthony. Any tips for responding to a negative review on sites such as Glassdoor?
The first one is take a step back. As an employer, if someone speaks negatively about you, it can be really difficult to respond emotionally, but then also respond fairly at the same time. So it's really important you take a step back before responding and let that emotion come out of you first. We've seen numerous examples of brands and people responding online, but they're responding with emotion, and it escalates the situation further, and it actually reinforces the original point that someone made online. In terms of responding to them, I would treat it the same as any negative comment on social media and just be open to exploring what the problem was. You know, you can take that internally and understand, is it a problem internally? And a lot of the time issues start off offline and end up online. You know, speak to, I'm just going off at a tangent, but I'll come back to the question. You know, speak to your sales department, speak to your customer services. Is there an increase in a particular type of complaint? Or with HR, is there a particular type of concern or a rumor that's going around the offices that you can take care of offline before it becomes an issue online? And in terms of responding, it would just be a case of respond to say, you know, like with any social media negative comment that you get, is thanking them for, you know, providing the feedback and their thoughts. You're sorry they feel that way, and offering them a chance to take it offline and giving them an email address or a phone number to talk about it. But it's about understanding as well, taking that feedback that you've had that's negative and understanding, is this a wider problem in your organization, or was it just a one-off?
Okay, so we have a question from Hannah asking if they're currently using recruitment agencies when they need to recruit, but considering advertising future roles themselves as well. But the agency has said they advertise on job boards for us. Is there any benefits for us advertising as well? Well, we talked quite a bit over the last few weeks with employers who have been in touch with us, actually taking this opportunity to review their recruitment strategy for the future. Because like with many things, they're looking at better ways of doing things across the business, not just with regards to recruitments, but with all suppliers and all needs, to improve results, to reduce costs. So it's actually been something that we've been talking a lot about. Employers that maybe are using agencies at the moment or doing advertising previously that hasn't been quite as effective. So as you heard earlier, we're big advocates at JVP of promoting employer brands to attract the best people. Now, one thing that's quite common when you're using agencies, and there are some very good agencies out there, of course, but often what happens is the agency is putting out adverts that say our clients. Now, given everything that I've said to you with regards to and advised to you around what's important for potential employees when they're seeking opportunities, they want to know about your business, about the culture, who you are as a company. So actually doing your own employer branded job advertising will really give you an opportunity to shine and showcase your employer brand and what you stand for, and to help you attract the better people. So it isn't just about saving costs of not having to pay agency fees, but actually it's about really showing people why they want to work for you beyond the job title and the salary. So definitely, Hannah, I would say if you are considering doing your own advertising, I would actually say you should be doing that first before you're thinking of engaging with an agency. If you know, get the right strategy in place, and certainly talk to us for advice. It's something that obviously we do for our clients day in, day out in terms of advertising their employer branded fake advertisements. But certainly we're happy to give any advice on this area. If you're unable, which is unlikely, but if you're unable to attract people through your own direct advertising, then of course you could look to agencies at that point. But honestly, from my experience, I come from an agency background. I've been running JVP now for 6.5 years with my team. Direct employer branded advertising will get you the very best people on the market. So definitely pleased to hear that you're considering going down that route, and please do pick up the phone and have a chat with us and we can give some more advice on it. Thanks, Hannah. Okay, and have we got any more questions? Anybody else got any burning questions that you'd like to cover? I think the key thing that I would, just while waiting for them to come through, I think the key thing that I would say, and I'm sure hopefully Anthony will be on the same page with this, is when it comes to existing employees and communicating in this crisis, the key thing is just to make sure we're doing it. I'm hearing too many stories of it where employees are, I've seen on social media, people commenting on the Martin Lewis page of people saying they've just not heard from their employer for weeks. They've got no idea what's going on. And no idea whether the jobs are going to be there to return to if they're currently on furlough. So there's a lot of dissatisfaction out there. So the key thing from my point of view is just making sure that you are communicating, and when you are, is that reassurance. So if anything, you would disagree with that at all, Anthony?
No, not at all. Like I said, when there's silence, it gets filled with rumour and misinformation, and you become disconnected with your employer. You know, if I was in that position and I had friends who were saying that they're getting daily updates from their employer or regular updates, and there's this going on, there's Zoom calls, you know, even if he was on furlough, it paints, like I said, everyone's true colours are coming out now as how they are as an employer.
We've got a couple of questions coming in here as well. Laura's asking, a lot of regular topics we would post about have been put on hold due to COVID. What are the hot topics right now?
It's going to depend on business to business. For some businesses, they're operating as normal, or they're in a very fortunate position in that they have, you know, increased sales or increased turnover, whatever it may be, during this period because their products or services actually align with an issue or a crisis. It will just depend on business to business and understanding your audience and what they want right now. If you're, for example, if you're a clothing brand, and you know, I remember right at the start of the coronavirus happening, they were sending out sort of sales offers and codes and things like that, and they came under a little bit of pressure because people have just been told they're being made redundant. This was before the furlough scheme came out. And they were being a bit insensitive to the situation, and they were trying to make people feel good about themselves by saying, well, why don't you buy some clothes? And we're seeing it at the minute with. I saw someone on LinkedIn saying they've had 3 emails saying, do you want to opt out of receiving Father's Day updates, because obviously lots of people have lost their fathers during the coronavirus. And she said it's almost like they sat on the same marketing webinar where they turned around and said, make sure you email everyone to make sure they don't want Father's Day updates. But actually, when you're then getting inundated with that, it makes the situation a little worse. But in terms of the hot topics right now, it's listen to your audience. Take a look on your website at your Google Analytics to see what pages they're going on. Have a look at your social media analytics to see what content is being engaged with the most. And that's probably what's hot for you right now. And I would continue to push that out.
And I would say for employees, I guess, if they're watching the many confusing press conferences and reading news stories on social media and what have you, there's a lot of information whirling around people's heads. So for employees that might be concerned, listening, having a conversation to actually understand what they might be thinking about, because there's a lot of confusion out there, isn't there? So that would be quite key. So for your internal communications to understand what is going on, so you can tailor those communications back accordingly. And we've got a question from Lisa. I appreciate we've got a range of different businesses and organisations on the webinar today of all different sizes and industries. But Lisa's asking, any tips on accessing good news from different services across a large organisation with 8,000 employees? So the large organisation looking for tips on accessing good news from different services.
I think the answer is relevant to a business of every size. The first obvious step is tell them that you're looking for positive news. I think there's, employees just make sure they come in, do their job and go home. And if we don't tell them that we want positive news stories and this is why, then they're never going to send anything through. And the second point is helping them understand why. When we run, a what is news training workshop for organizations, the very first thing we talk about is what that business is trying to achieve, because there's a reason why we want those positive news stories coming through, and it's because the business is trying to do X, Y, and Z. And if you get the employees on board to say, right, I know why we're doing it, I know what to do, it makes the process of actually doing it a lot easier. Now, in terms of when you've got a really large organization and different services, it's finding a champion within, one or two, or depending on how big the departments are, you could be looking for multiple champions of sharing positive news stories, and they funnel into, I'm assuming with an organization of 8,000, there's an internal PR and communications function, funnel it in to the PR and marketing team, who can then work with them on developing those as content ideas. What's really important is if they start to suggest ideas and the PR and comms team just, shut it down and say, we're not doing that, well, I'm going to stop sending story ideas through, because what's the point? So if something comes through and it's not quite right, work with them to say, we like this idea. Have we got these elements that we can build on that to really strengthen the story? And work with them to help them do that. So just in summary, it's tell everyone that you're wanting positive news stories. It's making sure they understand why they're doing it and the impact it's going to have. And it's making sure that there's different champions, so there's someone responsible for it. Because if you just tell every employee they're responsible for it, everyone will think everyone else is doing it and no one will do it. Whereas if you've got someone in charge as a champion of positive news within that service, it's part of their role to collate those stories within that service and department and send it up the funnel to the PR and comms team.
Fantastic, great advice, Anthony. Thank you. And just while waiting for a few more questions to come through, just a question from me really, because we're starting to see some employers that are obviously in an unfortunate situation where they're needing to make redundancies and restructure. Any advice around that in terms of limiting sort of negative PR that may come off the back of that? No doubt these businesses have got their reasons for, whether it be lack of work or financial reasons for needing to make these redundancies and restructure. But how is that best handled internally and also externally to make sure it doesn't leave a negative mark in the future when people may be considering that employer to work for? Job security, of course, being important. So what are your thoughts on that, Anthony, please?
I think from an internal point of view, it comes back to open, honest and transparency. Like I said, if you're open and honest with people, they will appreciate that much more, and they will understand that you're making the right decision if you're explaining everything to them. And not that any crisis is bad and this one's a good crisis, but a lot of businesses are going through the same issues, like the financial crash in 2008. There's going to be a lot of businesses making redundancies, and if you're making redundancies, it's not through poor management or poor leadership or making bad decisions or anything like that. It's through something that's happening globally. So that element of it is on your side, and that doesn't make you a bad employer. It's just you've been hit by something that's happening globally. As long as your communication is open, honest and transparent, and the process that you're going through for the redundancies and the frequency of communication is fine, then that will really help you, because the employees, yes, they're going to be disappointed, of course they are, but if they, like I said, if they receive an open and honest communication, they're being updated frequently, so they're not wondering, well, what's going on now? It helps them through the process as well. And then externally, yes, you know, depending on the size of business, you could be getting phone calls from the media. And what you've got to bear in mind is that any form of communication that you send out internally can end up externally as well. You know, an employee can share an email that you've sent out, or can share an official document with a journalist, whether, you know, putting their name to it or doing it under anonymity. So it's bearing that in mind. And again, with the media, it's about being open and honest. And if you know you've got redundancies coming up, or there's a high risk or a high chance of redundancies happening, work now to prepare media statements and to prepare your internal communications. We've got various documents for various clients, and, you know, past and current, around these types of scenarios where there could be this issue. And rather than getting an inquiry and having to think on your feet and deal with it and rushing a statement and getting something wrong, you've got something there that you can look at, dust it off, read it, make sure it's fine, and give that to the media. And it's one less thing to worry about during what is a tough time.
Absolutely. Great advice. Thank you very much, Anthony. The questions have quietened off now, so I think we'll call that a wrap for today. But of course, myself and Anthony will welcome any questions if you want to come and contact us directly afterwards. There will be an email that goes around today with a copy of the video and slides, and our contact details will be on there too. So keep safe, everyone. Keep those great communications going on, and we hope to see you at another webinar very soon. Thank you so much. Take care now.
Cheers. Bye.